Perhaps the most well-known model of reflective practice, which attempts to link theory to practice, is the model by Agirius and Schoen. They talk about two types of learning from reflection, and that's single loop learning and double loop learning. Single loop learning is about the practitioner reflecting and then acting in relation to something which they experience in the classroom. It relies on standardized techniques, practices in order to solve a problem, and does not change those techniques or practices at any particular point. This is in contrast to double loop learning, where the learning can in fact impact on the practices or the approaches which the teacher uses in order to change them. So therefore a reaction to an event can actually change with time. With single loop learning, the reaction would not change. And it's possible for us to look at this in a very simple diagram. And we can see here that single loop learning just takes one step back from the results, the event, the experience that the teacher has, through to strategizing approaches to deal with that event in the future. They can be very standardized approaches. With double loop learning, it is a little bit deeper in the sense that the teacher is thinking about their assumptions about the event, why things happen, their beliefs around why things happened, which then can inform the strategies and therefore can possibly change the strategies. And then these strategies are used to deal with the event in future. So single loop learning and double loop learning are two approaches within this model to change practice, but one is quite fixed, the other is very flexible. So single loop learning then does rely on fixed practices, single ideas, and repetition of approaches rather than trying to extend practice. And therefore there's a certain amount of automaticity about how the teacher approaches their work in the classroom. There's less thinking and trying out new ideas rather than just relying on old practices. And double loop learning is then much more creative as a process, in a way somewhat experimental for the teacher. Changing assumptions means that the approaches will change. The approaches may work, the approaches may not work, and therefore this will lead to a new experience and therefore a new double loop. And the key point of double loop learning is about the teacher re-evaluating their own perceptions of what they're doing, looking at their goals, trying to reframe their assumptions and beliefs about teaching. And this is the key aspect of double loop learning. It is very much about the teacher getting a much bigger perspective on their role. Single loop learning focuses very much on a much smaller and much more mechanistic perspective. So double loop learning is very much about the teacher looking much more deeply at their own role, whereas single loop learning actually is becoming quite instrumental in terms of how the teacher is approaching teaching. And both can have a constructive outcome, but in this model, double loop learning is considered to be much more constructive, potentially, because of the opportunity for change and the opportunity for growth.